Hey, this is Amanda Hammett, and this is the Millennial Rockstar Podcast. Hey, this is Amanda Hammett. I am known as the Millennial Translator because I help companies attract, retain, and engage top millennial talent. And my top millennial talent of the day is coming to us from John Deere. Her name is Erin Welkin. Erin, welcome to the show.
Hi, everyone. Like Amanda said, my name is Erin Welkin. I have been with John Deere in numerous different roles in all different functional areas for the last 10 years. Wow. So I am super excited to be here and to share some of my experience with Amanda. I was honestly really surprised when I met her and she informed me that I was a millennial. So I didn't know that was the case. So now that I am, I guess I'll just embrace that and maybe try to change the perspective a little bit.
Well, that's awesome. That's exactly the whole point of this entire podcast. We can just shut down right now.
Perfect.
Pointed that out. Awesome. Well, I will say that the first time I met you, we were at a Women in Manufacturing event, and I was just really taken with you and your story and just your poise and just everything. And so I'd love to chat with you all through that again, just this time for the audience. But let's get started. Can you give me an idea about, were there any, when you came into the workforce from college, were there any reality checks that you faced where you thought, coming out of college, oh, the working world's going to be this way, and then you got there and it was like, nope, not like that at all?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing for me was realizing that it's not about what you execute, but how you execute it.
Oh.
So I kind of came in and was blessed to have a job that I knew nothing about. And so I was learning, and then I gave a list of things that I needed to drastically change, which is super fun because everybody loves change. And then I just tried to execute that list, and it did not work at all. So that was one of my key takeaways, is that it's not so much what I do, but how I do it and how I engage people. And so it ended up being a fantastic learning opportunity. But that's been something that stuck with me for my entire career, is that I have got to work with others and I have to have a really compelling why. So why is this important? Why am I trying to change it? And so as I've kind of built my career, I've really built myself on being able to work and collaborate with others.
That's really cool. So the way I would spin that to a company is that this is the way you have built your personal brand within the company. You're known as a collaborator. You are known to build that into everything that you do. And I think that is so important, especially the way that the economy is changing and the workplace is changing. That's going to pay dividends for you long term.
Yeah.
Well, very cool. So what is your current role with John Deere?
So I'm the manager of business process improvement. And so my focus area is on supplier quality. And I'm actually in the supply management organization. So it's a little bit of, it's actually a role that I was probably given because of the collaboration skills. So supplier quality lives in one bucket in John Deere, and supply management has its own bucket. So I support all of our ag and turf business, which is about 80% of our suppliers globally for John Deere, and help collaborate between our supplier quality organization and our supply management organization.
Wow. That is, that sounds like a very small job to do with 80% of all of John Deere's worldwide business. Okay. All right. So now moving into this role, I mean, you said that you probably got this role because of, your collaboration experience and all that good stuff. Did you find in this role or in other roles that there were any sort of stumbling blocks or learning curves that you really, really had to face? And how did you do that? How did you manage it?
Yeah, so I'm going to give you a little background. My degree is in sports medicine and athletic training. So athletic training and zoology. I was a pre-med major. So now I'm in John Deere supply management. So let's talk about learning curves and roadblocks and whatever else you want to talk about. I got a whole journey for you. So every job I've ever had in John Deere has been brand new to me and not what I went to school for. I actually got accepted to medical school, decided to wait a year because I was getting married, started at John Deere and just loved it. So I know you've got questions probably later about what I loved, but I convinced them that I could do safety because I knew about injuries. And the factory that I started at had an injury problem and they never had a safety person. So they posted for it. I'm not sure that they exactly knew what they wanted, but I convinced them that I was their girl because I could do injuries and knew ergonomics. I didn't know anything about OSHA. I had never worked in a factory. I mean, nothing.
Right.
So I grew up on a farm kid. I knew about John Deere, but that was the extent of it. So I went from there and then actually became an environment health and safety manager. So again, environmental, EPA, all of those calculations, it's totally different. So again, another learning curve. But one thing I've gotten really good at throughout all of my experiences is not being afraid to step up to the challenge. So I know one of my strengths is that I'm actually really good at learning. Like, I love the challenge. I love to learn. So throw something at me that I don't understand, and I'm going to dive right in and be happy about it. And as long as I have the autonomy to kind of make it my own, but I did that. And then I went into a labor relations role that was focused on like human psychology. So how can we use like why people make errors? So I'd study that and improve our processes with engineering to improve that. So again, something completely different, but it's also shaped how I worked. And from there, I went into operations, basically an operations project manager. So I did strategic planning for the factory, and EHS reported to me, did some continuous improvement things, worked with the operations team, developing that type of thing. And then into lean manufacturing that initially was US and Canada, and ended up supporting a lot of factories even globally. So,
wow. So
yeah,
is that 5 or 6 roles in 10 years?
I don't know. I've never counted, probably 5 or 6. It's a few.
It's a few, but I mean, I love the progression. And I think that this is something that we're starting to very commonly see is millennials have there's this issue that people are saying, oh, they don't even stay 2 years. It's awful. But what I've heard from you and what I've heard from every other rock star I have interviewed to this point is that they've actually had long tenures at companies, but they have moved, whether it's a lateral move or a slightly, advanced move, but from area to area because they love that learning challenge. Whereas in previous generations, you go into a company and you move just up, but millennials tend to move in a very like lily pad from, a frog jumping from lily pad to lily pad. And that's what I've seen with you. That's really cool.
Yeah, and one of the things I look at is what are the competencies that I want to gain. So I have a list of here's what I perceive are my strengths, here's what are my weaknesses, and here's what I think is untested or unproven at John Deere. So I always picture if people are in a talent review and they're having a discussion about me, there's going to be people in the room and they're going to say, she hasn't demonstrated this or she hasn't done that. And maybe I have that experience outside of John Deere that tells me that I could do it and I can be good at it, but I might not have had those specific internal experiences. So when I pick or consider next jobs, I mean, there's a lot that I consider, but one of the key drivers for me are, what are the things that I haven't shown yet? Because eventually I want to get to the point that people have enough trust and also build my network as I go through all of these areas. But I don't look at job titles. I don't look at pay, actually. I really look at, for myself, what am I going to learn from this job? And then how does that ultimately enhance my ability to be successful in my kind of end future job that I really want? And so what competencies do I think I need? What are my gaps? What can I continue to build? What am I known for? What's my brand? All of that. And it's really kind of helping me be really flexible with what the company needs.
Right.
I haven't boxed myself in, which I think is really good. And eventually it should lead to some of the roles that I'm really curious about or that I'd like to achieve in the future.
That's awesome. So I've got to ask at this point, I mean, you talked about, you seem incredibly self-aware about, what are your strengths, but you also mentioned what are your gaps. Do you have other people that are giving you input as far as, hey, Erin, I've noticed, you could use some work on XYZ? Are those like mentors or those bosses? Who is helping you with this process?
So I would say I've been really blessed with informal mentors. So I've reached out when I was doing my MBA. I actually reached out and got a couple formal mentors in some of the areas that I just didn't know anything about, like marketing. So what do we do for marketing at John Deere? Okay, I can read about it in a book, or you can tell me. So I did that, but honestly, just in meetings, I have the opportunity to present quite a bit, on reports and different things. And I had some leaders say, hey, I'd like to have a career discussion with you. Or I've reached out and said, I really liked what you said in that meeting, or I went to this panel discussion that you were talking about. Would you mind if I set up a 30-minute meeting with you? So I've really advocated, so some people have known me for a couple of years, and others maybe saw me present for 10 minutes, or maybe talked to me in the hallway for 2 minutes,
Right.
But I always go and say, here's my resume, here's who I am, but most importantly, here's what I perceive are my competencies that I've gained out of each one of these, and here's what I think are my gaps, and I put it out there. And then they've given me feedback and said, well, this might also be a gap based on your jobs. This might also be a strength, or this is one thing that I see about you. And so over time, I've had probably 4 or 5 of those really in-depth discussions with leaders from different functional areas, but
Right.
I've initiated it. A couple times they've offered, but I had to take the step forward and actually do it. And I had to go to them very organized. So I didn't want to waste their time, and I really wanted some good feedback from them. And that's really helped. That shifted my thinking from what job do I want next to what competencies do I want to fill. If I wouldn't have had those discussions, I don't know that my brain would have connected the dots to competencies and kind of backing off on that focus on grade levels or job titles or things like that. So those discussions really help shape some of the decisions that I've made.
Wow. Okay. So I just want to be incredibly clear for our younger employees that are listening. When you say you go into these meetings incredibly organized, break it down for me. What does that mean to you?
So I take at least half an hour to an hour and really get what are my 3 to 5 key items that I want to get out of this meeting. What are some ways that I could potentially help that person? So what are some of their challenges that they may have in their role? Like, what can I offer back kind of to reciprocate to them,
Yeah, very good.
So I try to offer that back. And then, like I said, I send my resume in advance. So at least a week in advance, or I put it right in the meeting notice. And then I also let them know, like, here's my strengths and weaknesses, and some of the jobs that I would consider for a next job and what my ultimate job would be. So if I could pick an ultimate role, it might not be the job title, but where do I think I want to go? And then that helps shape the whole conversation for them, because they can see where I want to go. It much better informs where my gaps are, and it gives them an opportunity to give me better feedback.
That is amazing. And I love that you're doing that. And I love that you're advocating for yourself. That a lot of times, especially we tend to see this a little more in women than in men, but they're just not willing to speak up. And they keep saying, I want to let my work speak for itself. But at the end of the day, it's the person that puts forth the effort and puts forth the, hey, look at me, this is what I want. Those are the people that tend to get it. So congratulations. That's awesome. All right. So I've got a couple more specific questions about what the inner workings of what you do. Is there anything that your current boss or past bosses or coworkers have done that really keeps you engaged and wanting to be productive at work and moving John Deere forward?
So the biggest thing for me right now, I'm a single mom with 2 kids, it's flexibility. Just the fact that John Deere is super flexible with me. So I've got a job and they trust me to do it and get it done. And I've got some flexibility that I can, go pick up my kids from school if I need to. I don't do it every day, but when I need to, if I've got a babysitter conflict or whatever, I can do that. I don't have to take vacation to do it. If I do that and I want to make it up after they go to bed, if I need to finish out my day, that's okay. So to me, just being able to, I don't call it work-life balance, I call it work-life management, but being able to actually manage my life. And some weeks it's, 70, 80 hours of work, and other weeks, if it's a little less than 40, okay. In the end, it is balanced to me, and that's probably the most important. The other thing is just the environment I think that John Deere creates is really, really positive. So it's a very I don't know what the right word is, but brought together culture. So it's not highly competitive, and it's really collaborative. So for me, I always enjoy meeting new people, and I almost always have the feeling that we're mutually working towards a common cause. And that's awesome. So I don't feel like somebody's going to undercut me. I mean, there's been maybe one or two in all of my time at John Deere that I've met people that you're like, probably wouldn't trust you. But for the most part, our leadership and the people that I get to work with are just phenomenal.
Right.
So having that collaborative where you actually feel like you can make friends is really important to me.
So would you say it's more of like almost like a family type environment?
Yes. Yep, for sure.
And is that something that you think comes down from the C-suite down, or is it like your direct leadership, or what do you mean?
I think it really starts from the top of our company, to be completely transparent. There isn't a leader in our company that I wouldn't feel comfortable with. I mean, just 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was in the elevator with our president, so level number 2, right below the CEO. Actually, 2 presidents. So, and we're, how's North Carolina? Things like that. And it's just not weird. And they smile and they take the first initiative to say hello. And it makes it okay for you to have a conversation and say, even if it's just nice to meet you as you go down one floor or something like that. But I think they do a lot to try to open the door and to give you FaceTime and opportunities to meet with them, which is really nice.
You know what? I love that. I was just having a conversation with a major corporation recently, and we were talking about, getting the CEO out there more like with the employees, and he really was struggling because he was like, I'm very private. And it's like, well, even when you're in kind of like the cafeteria, the commons area, you need to be approachable. And so we need to do something to bridge that for you. Because it counts when it comes to turnover. When employees feel comfortable and when they feel like everybody is working with them, they're more likely to be loyal, they're more likely to be engaged, and they're more likely to be productive. And that's a bottom line issue right there. So I love that. I love that a lot, actually. So, and what gets me is that, you're a woman, you're at John Deere, and you don't typically think of John Deere as this bastion of women, but you had told me before that you're actually very involved with the women's ERG group.
Yes,
we have
we have a Women in Operations ERG group, which I'm the vice chair of. It's actually led by a male right now, so we've been rotating men and female. But it's really interesting because for us, most of our leaders are male. And so we're trying to get women in there, but we've realized that we need to have men as partners with us. And so our Women in Operations group is really focused on trying to understand why women don't want to come into operations. And some of it is it's very structured. So I talked about flexibility just a little bit ago. That is not typical operations. You've got a production workforce that reports to you and things like that. And as women, I think we put up a lot of barriers. So a lot of automatic barriers that says, I can't because. And as I started talking to women about being in operations or operations jobs, which I think are phenomenal, I started hearing a lot of I can'ts. And nothing drives me more crazy than the I can'ts. Even if I hear myself say I can't, then that's exactly what I want to do because it drives me crazy. Right. And so the Women in Operations group has really been great for that. ERGs in general at John Deere are amazing development opportunities and a good way to build your network. Even when we just moved to North Carolina, the first people that I reached out to were the people that I met in Women in Operations. They said, hey, I'm moving. Right now I've got a job that travels about 50%, which I could do from North Carolina. So that's awesome. I had a boss that was like, you've already got a network. I trust you. We can work with that. That's fine. You can work from there. But in the end, we had kind of been working on a transition plan and what's next for me, which is another thing, that transparency. But I didn't wait for him to figure it out for me. I reached out and just said, hey, I'm moving. If you guys know of anything or anyone, let me know. As I found jobs that were actually posted that looked interesting to me. So again, I took a little change from my traditional path, but hey, this one looks interesting. Who do I know that knows that hiring manager? And it was my network that I built through our Women in Operations ERG. found a couple people. I don't know if he got really annoyed or just said, I have to hire this girl because nobody, these people aren't going to forgive me. My friends aren't going to forgive me if I don't. But that really helped me quite a bit. So whatever your passion is, having those ERG groups and that network that you meet that you wouldn't have met otherwise, that you would have never gotten to work with, and then prove yourself to them as a leader, it builds a lot of bridges for you in the future.
Yeah, that is amazing. And I love that you've had all these opportunities because your network, it speaks volumes about you. So, all right. Is there anything that John Deere, you feel, just the environment that they've created, the culture that they've created, is there any way you feel that they're really supporting you and behind you and really encapsulating that family feel for you?
So I think one of the things, I've been really lucky to have some amazing bosses. So first and foremost, they focus a lot on development. So I can go, we have a whole John Deere University, and I can go and take courses. We have individual development plans that you can get alignment from your manager on what are the things that you want to do, what are the things you want to do to develop yourself that year. So just knowing that I have a lot of control over what I do and how I choose to develop myself is the first thing. The second thing is I know that they're having talent reviews. So I know that the concept of you're going to be stuck in any job for 5 or 10 years is pretty low unless you want to. And there are definitely people that want to, which is fantastic. But just knowing that it is part of a regular cadence and review, and you don't know what goes on behind closed doors or who says what, but you know that people are talking. Right. And it gives you the thought that there's an opportunity for you to move up. But I also think it kind of goes with who knows you, so if you've got people in the room and only one person's ever heard of you.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes
when they do their swap and who wants this person or, who could use this, it doesn't work really well. So I think all of the ways that you can generate that and build those relationships helps a lot. And also within John Deere then, with the ERGs and with the different conferences that we have and just different ways to meet people and get out there and get visibility to leadership is huge.
Absolutely.
You feel like you're part of something important and you feel like you have an opportunity.
Very cool. Now, there is something I do want to discuss and I do want to put out there is that you actually do some really interesting work outside of John Deere, outside of all of your responsibilities with John Deere and your family. You actually are doing something else really special. And I'd like for you to share. I'd like for you to share with us what that is.
So I was widowed at the age of 29. So I had married my best friend who was also my coach and my mentor. Luckily, he was like personality opposite of mine. So we matched really well. But he passed away in a car accident unexpectedly. And I have 2 daughters. They were 4 and 2 at the time. So I was, gone half the time with work and really career focused. And I had to put the brakes on and try to understand who am I now and what's really going to work and how do I do this? And so on the career side, it was, you talk about learning curves, and I could talk about that, but how do you build resilience? How do you reshape your career and understand how to be a single mom when you were, dual parent household, all of that stuff. It took a little while, and I'm forever grateful to John Deere for all of the help that they gave me, which is another I was really loyal before, but I think it even went up more, not just because of how amazing they were in the challenges that I had. But anyways, fast forward a little while, and I realized that my biggest fear for my kids was their ability to have a good education. With me trying to work and trying to do everything, I just knew I couldn't be Superwoman. So how was I going to help them get an education so they could be successful? And I'm lucky that I do have a good job, but not everybody does. In fact, over 40% of widows under the age of 45 live in poverty. Well, that's people that have kids. So you think about those kids, now they lost a parent, now they're in poverty when maybe they weren't before, and we're expecting them to study and do well. So I just felt like there's a huge opportunity for these kids to fall through the gap. And so I created the Young Widow Living Foundation, and what I do is work to bridge the gap for kids and meet their educational needs, whatever age they are. So it's pretty exciting. It's really my passion to do that. And then to help fund that, I do some speaking around, planning for the unexpected and even resilience at work and things like that. I'll basically talk about anything if you will give me a donation to help these kids. So that's what I do, and that's really my fun thing. And I schedule it early mornings before work and at lunchtime and after work and make it work. But at the same point, John Deere is also really supportive of that. So volunteering in the community and getting out to the schools and things like that are all things that they very, very actively support through a number of different programs. And so I really appreciate that. And we have a John Deere Foundation that provides donations through multiple different avenues. And they also provide matches for us. So we feel like no matter what your passion is, you can make a difference, and John Deere's there to help you.
That's amazing. I love that. I do. That was one of the things that I was so taken with when I met you, was just that. I mean, that is something that for a lot of people is such a scary thing, but you made it through that. And obviously you had a wonderful support system, but you're like, you know what, not only did this happen to me, but I recognize this could happen to others, and how can I help? And that's amazing. I mean, that's, I think, what we're all here to do in one way or another. So.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, fantastic. Well, Erin, is it okay if our audience wants to reach out to you on LinkedIn?
I would love it.
Perfect. And perfect. Well, is it also, would it be okay with you if in the show notes, if I also include maybe a link to your foundation?
That'd be awesome as well. Yes.
Perfect. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us for this episode of the Millennial Rockstar Podcast. And Erin, thank you so much for being on with us and for being a rock star, of course. Thank you guys again, and we will see you in the very next episode. Bye. Thanks so much for joining us for this episode of the Millennial Rockstar Podcast. If you are looking for even more information on millennials and some free resources, visit my website at amandahammett.com. The link is below. It's amandahammett.com. There you can download a free millennial employee engagement guide that will give you all kinds of tips and tricks on how to keep those millennials engaged on a day-to-day basis. Because we all know that millennials who are happy at work are more productive at work.